VTI, VOO, which Vanguard ETF is better? We're going to do a comparison, an in-depth video, and I'm going to do this massive controversial take that absolutely no one really talks about when you're comparing ETFs and just around investing. This isn't financial advice, but this is what I do and what I feel like. And actually, we're just talking about like the psychology of money and what math is. And math isn't that interpretable. For the math that we're doing right now, there's fact and there's wrong, there's right and wrong, you know what I mean? So we're gonna be talking about all that. And in this video, you're gonna learn something. So I highly encourage you staying through the video. We're gonna talk about something that nobody really talks about, and I can inherently tell you, because no one talks about it, you're gonna learn something because you probably haven't otherwise been exposed to it. So before we get into it, there's a button down below me right now that says subscribe. If you haven't already clicked that, it's the free thing to do. It's the only free thing to do in this world. But if you click that, you might actually get exposed to some of the other educational content that I produce, which is one, free. I'll never charge you anything. And two, you might get out of debt, make more money, become entrepreneurial, retire early, actually retire, all these benefits. And it comes from the only free action of just clicking that button right below, so I would really appreciate it. So while I wanted to make a video that absolutely compared VTI and VOO, which are Vanguard ETFs that track the total stock market and the S&P 500, I realized that in creating this elaborate video comparing these two ETFs, I started getting exposed to data about people just like either not investing, YOLOing into individual stocks, owning like very much individual stocks and not having any broad market ETFs. I found horror stories and actual market data around how much people lost during COVID and other drops when they weren't allocating their assets properly. And I realized that that's not the real question. And my controversial take is VTI versus VOO, it absolutely doesn't matter. One has returns of XYZ over time. The other has returns of XYZD. I'm not even going to tell you what those returns are because one, they're pretty similar, right? The total stock market, S&P 500, they've always tracked at some level, right? Maybe the S&P 500 is a little bit more aggressive. You've got a little bit more volatility. It has a little bit higher returns right now. The total stock market has a little bit less volatility. It still has really good returns, but it's not as high as the S&P 500. I'm younger. I'm willing to eat the volatility. I invest my money personally in VOO, but I also have a little VTI to just like balance my portfolio. But that shouldn't be the full stop of the video. What's important here is that and I can't give financial advice, I can't say you, but if I were in the situation where I was like, where do I put my money? You need to make sure that you have heavy exposure to one of these ETFs. Because, again, if I were in these shoes and I was deciding where my money went, sure, investing in individual stocks is great. And I invested in Tesla and in Nvidia and all these great stocks, but they were small portions of my portfolio that grew over time. Like I've been exposed to great returns. They could have been, astronomical. If I'd put all my money into Nvidia, that would have been absolutely amazing. But if I had put all my money into Rivian when it came out, which could have had the same growth potential, I would have significantly less money that took me years to save, right? Playing the stock market and doing your research is all important, and it can make you have accelerated wealth generation. But the one thing that you can't unsee is basically VOO and VTI have outperformed the best trading minds year over year, decade over decade, and you can't unprove that statement. Their returns will beat the best of decision makers in some years and in most years. That means that if you invest in one of those two things, you're going to outperform people that do this for a living with unlimited resources to educate themselves, that literally focus on this for their entire livelihood, just investing in one of these broad market ETFs that doesn't cost you that much in terms of management funds and cost of the portfolio in the ETF, you're going to outperform them. You're also going to have really aggressive numbers, and if you follow this very structured approach, which is what I've done, where I've said the majority of my money are going to go into these two ETFs, and it's going to balance my portfolio. My portfolio is going to be pretty solid because I'm spreading that money out either across the total stock market or the S&P 500, which is the largest 500 companies in the United States. I have a lot of insulation. Yeah, if the total stock market goes down, yeah, I might lose some money, but I'm going to lose less money if the total stock market goes down and I'm in a stock that gets absolutely thrashed even more when that happens and I lose everything, right? So part of investing, because it is a risk, is protecting your money, getting really awesome growth, which year on year, these things produce awesome growth, and ultimately getting enough money where you can have those fun in times where you invest in individual stocks and expose yourself to this hyper growth. But You don't want to gamble, right? Because that gamble could be the difference between you retiring at 50 or 60 or working and having a heart attack while you work at Walmart at the age of 75, right? And until you realize that those are the stakes, right? And you might say, oh, it's not going to happen to me. That's not going to happen to me. If you lose your money, it is, right? And, you know, like the classic example, which unfortunately I haven't had the time to live through, was, you know, people that invested during the dot-com bubble. There were all these sure things, right? Companies that were like Amazon or Google or Apple that went to zero, which means people that invested their entire livelihoods, it disappeared, right? Housing market, people put everything they had into these housing assets to grow their income and grow their net worth. Zero. They defaulted on their mortgage. So what you have to do to best protect you is make sure you never go to zero again. But more so, you protect yourself in an upward motion. And if you can do that, right, that solves all the problems. So if you've clicked on this video to find out, do I invest in VOO or VTI? The answer is you've made the right decision by looking at these two individual stocks. If you're older, like if I was older, and again, I gotta be careful. If I was older, VTI. Because I'm younger, VOO. Because I like to have some spread, I'm a little bit right now. I'm probably like 80 VOO, 20 VTI, and I'm about to be 30. That's what I'm currently doing, and that represents 70% of my portfolio. From my money that I've put in, it represents about 90% of my portfolio, but because I've had really good stock picks for the money where I do individually invest in that other 10%, that 10% is proportionally grown to about 30% of my portfolio. Again, because I've been in, you know, I was in Moderna going into COVID. I've been in Pfizer going into COVID. I've been in Nvidia, AMD, Apple, Google, Tesla for years, right? Bitcoin. Like I've had all these other investments that have grown and changed the way my portfolio is, and it probably needs some refactoring. But the first step is just understanding that either of those options are good, and one versus the other, there isn't a whole lot of advantage. The advantage is just understanding the amount of allocation that you need to have towards them and what they actually provide in terms of benefits in the stability and the future options to really make big plays, right? So those are the things that I wanted to say in this video. Yes, that's a controversial take because everybody gets clicks off of saying one or the other's bad, one's good, oh my God, don't do this one. They're both fine, right? And they honestly don't offer that much difference, right? So you could even go, like I might go 50-50 into them, right? They're very, very, very similar. That's just the reality, right? And I could, you know, a lot of YouTubers will tell you like one has this return, one has this return, and then they'll try to project it over time. The answer is you can't really do that because not only are things at all times highs, but we don't really have like models are breaking. We don't have these historical models because we're going through things like COVID and massive inflation and all these things where we were like, we'd like to try to adjust them into economic models that we've had, but we just can't do that, right? I mean, things are changing, and the best way to protect yourself is to stay ahead of the curve as much as you can. And part of that is insulation, part of that is risk analysis, and part of that is also just understanding, I gotta do what makes the most sense for you, right? And in terms of that, it is not taking risks, and it's clicking on this video and choosing the right stock. And ultimately, these two stocks or these two ETFs are totally okay. Either one you choose is fine. I would personally adjust based on my age, but that's really it. We're talking about pennies here. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.